It's Wulf, and it's a 15 first impressions. This one is about the Division Resurgence. If you're like me, you might not have even realized that this game came out, because I didn't realize it came out either until about a day after it did. I got suggested one of the trailers for it on YouTube, and I heard literally almost nothing about this game. I knew that it existed, but I had no idea that it was coming out so soon. This is the third game in the Division franchise, and as you can probably tell by the gameplay you're seeing right now, this game is actually a mobile game. The gameplay that I've recorded is a little bit different than my usual gameplay because I recorded it off of my iPad. In the bottom left corner you can even see that it says my device is an iPad mini 6th generation. And so I suppose that's a good place to start with talking about this game for the 15 first impressions, the way I recorded this. So I used a USB-C hub plugged into my iPad, and then that USB-C hub has a whole bunch of inputs and outputs, and so I used HDMI through the USB-C hub to plug it into my Elgato, which I then was able to record the gameplay with. Additionally, in the first part of this gameplay, you might notice that it doesn't really seem like I'm using touch controls, and that's because I'm not. This game actually has both mouse and keyboard support and controller support. I messed around with both of them. Mouse and keyboard, I plugged my mouse and my keyboard right into the USB-C hub, and they worked fine. It takes a little bit of setting up, because like you guys could probably see on the screen, there's sort of a emulation, like a touch emulation thing that the iPad does when you have a mouse plugged in, and that was still visible on the screen most of the time, but it's not always visible on the screen. When I was testing it out, it didn't always do that. But anyway, mouse and keyboard works mostly fine, and the controls are almost the same as it is for the Division on PC. And then I also hooked up an Xbox controller, I think it was my Xbox Series X controller, over Bluetooth to test that out, and that works fine as well. The controls on there seem to be the same as if you were playing the Division on Xbox. And the only thing is, I did notice that hooking a controller up over USB via my USB-C hub didn't seem to work. So I don't know if that means that all controllers via USB don't work if it's only Bluetooth, but that would be kind of odd. But anyway, that all worked. So I think graphics is probably the next best thing to talk about. So the gameplay that you guys are seeing now does not look the greatest, because the game doesn't look the greatest when you plug it into a monitor like I did. But if you're just playing on your phone or your iPad, it actually looks pretty good. I have it on medium settings and on like a semi-high frame rate. I can't remember what exactly the settings are. So it was running at medium settings at 45 frames per second, which is a little bit of a weird frame rate, but it looks better than 30, and I couldn't get 60 FPS on my device. It said that it wasn't available for it. But of course, that's going to depend on what device you're using. I got my iPad used. I didn't even really realize it was a 6th generation. I think I knew that, but I hadn't seen it in a while. So I looked that up, and that iPad is from 2021, I think. So for a device that's a couple years old, I think it still ran the game pretty well at pretty alright settings. And as I said, if you're playing it on a smaller screen, it looks far better than it does when you have it hooked up to an actual monitor or TV. I am impressed though, because between the ability to hook it up to a monitor and use a mouse and keyboard or a controller, this really is not what I would expect from a mobile gaming experience. I don't play that many mobile games, but I know that they've gotten higher in quality over the past few years. But the Division Resurgence genuinely feels like a game that could have been dropped onto consoles and computer, at least in terms of gameplay and stuff. I haven't really played that far into the story, so I don't know if the story is that level of quality. But gameplay-wise, I was really surprised how much it felt like I was just playing the Division. The only thing I will say is that the sensitivity for mouse controls felt a little bit weird. I'm sure with more tweaking it could have been better, but it felt very choppy compared to normal, just the Division gameplay on PC. But it still works fine. But if you guys are seeing that it's kind of choppy in the gameplay, that's why. Eventually, I swapped back to touch controls just to show that a little bit too, and those also work really well for this game. Although there are some things that I don't think you can really do with the touch controls, like blind firing from cover and things like that, that you can do if you're playing with a mouse and keyboard or a controller. When it comes to the story of this game, I'm not entirely sure what it's about, honestly, because I've only played through the prologue, and then in this gameplay I just did some side missions. But the prologue is actually pretty long. It's like 3 missions, and I think it took me about an hour to finish, so it's probably between like 45 minutes to an hour. I kept getting interrupted while I was playing it. But the prologue actually takes place before the first Division game, and you play as a first wave agent. And then, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but not really, at the end of the prologue, you get knocked out and put into a coma, and your character is apparently in a coma throughout the entire events of the first Division, because by the time you wake up, you meet Fei Lao, who is in the Division 1, and she kind of briefs you that actually the cleaners are gone, The Last Man Battalion is gone. The Rikers are still around, but not very much. So this game kind of skips over the events of the First Division, even though they still happen, and you pick up where the First Division left off. I've heard that this game acts sort of like a bridge between the Division 1 and the Division 2, but I'm not entirely sure how it ties in with the Division 2 because I actually haven't really played that much of the Division 2. I own it, but just never got around to playing it. However, I have spent a lot of time playing the original Division, and I even made a review of it not that long ago, which was kind of inadvertently pretty good timing on my part. This game takes place in Manhattan, in New York City, seems to share sort of the same map as the Division 1. I'm not totally sure how one-to-one it is with the Division's original map, but I know that the Division in general seems to constantly kind of go back to New York City. The Division 1 took place in New York City, the Division 2 took place in Washington, D.C., but had DLC that took place in New York City, and then now the Division Resurgence returns to New York City again. I did notice that in terms of map size, the map that you get seems mostly like the western part of the map from the Division 1. So from the starting area all the way on the west side of the map to the dark zone that's in kind of the middle of the Division 1's map is the play area. But like I said, I'm not totally sure how it compares in terms of where everything is to the Division 1, but there are definitely locations that I've recognized. And I suppose it makes sense that Ubisoft wants to reuse their New York City map quite a bit because when the Division 1 came out, the Division was actually pretty unique in that it is a one-to-one recreation of New York City. There's videos online you can find of people comparing locations in the game to locations in real life, and even though I've never lived in New York City, I've been to New York City before, and even myself, I know that there's areas within the Division that look very similar to how they look in real life. That is kind of all I have to say about this game though, really. I don't have a lot of thoughts about it. I just mostly wanted to make a video about it because I don't think a lot of people even realize that this came out, and it is kind of interesting. I am curious to see if this game eventually gets a port to PC and maybe even consoles, because it's a little surprising that it didn't get that. I understand that Ubisoft probably wanted to move the franchise into the mobile gaming market just because it is such a big market on its own, even without the game being released on normal PC and consoles and stuff. But the way that this game is set up would probably make it really easy to make a PC port of this game. And honestly, I think it kind of makes sense to make one so long as it doesn't eventually become kind of a gacha game. Like I said, I didn't play enough to see how this game is monetized, but at least in the early couple of stages, it doesn't seem that bad. So I am curious to see where this game goes. I am glad that the Division has a mobile release. I've actually enjoyed playing this on my iPad quite a bit, so this is pretty fun. And in terms of like quality, it almost reminds me of Call of Duty Mobile. Call of Duty Mobile was also a pretty good game. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end my commentary there. Hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of the gameplay, if there is any. I know that there's going to be a bit of this video that I'm going to have to cut because there was a lot of gameplay of me just running around. But I would suggest checking this out if you have a mobile device that can run it, because it is actually pretty cool. And you don't really need to know anything about the Division to jump into it, because even though it kind of takes place before and after the First Division, nothing from that game or the second game seems to really be necessary to know to play this game. So anyway, thanks for watching. I will see you in other stuff in the future, and bye-bye.
Heads up, Agent. I've been informed that the SCP has dropped some supply crates near your position. Head there and make sure those supplies don't fall into the wrong hands.
Keep me covered while I move! Gotta find some protection! Got him lined up just right! Keep covered while I move! They're trying to flank us! Got him lined up just right! Take a fire! Got eyes on a fence! Contact! He's moving! Keep your head down, guys! Got him lined up just right! Can't get an angle on him! Gotta find some protection! Down a man! Under fire! Cover all guys! Oh, wicked! They're hitting from the other side! It's useless now! Son of a bitch!
Agent, we got word of illicit arms deal in your general vicinity. Shut it down and impound those weapons.
You want top-of-the-line shit? You gotta pay for it.
Tell you what, throw in those 44s and we have a deal.
Money and kill every last one of them.
God damn it, I knew it!
Shoot them down. You're surrounded, loser. Fucking pay for that. This'll be sweet. I see you. Here we go. Get that free! Damn it! Oh my God! Stop that dump! Ah! Just shoot him! Oh, Christ! Bastards! Those bastards! Fucking pay for that!
Our guys have arrived. Thanks for your help, Agent. We can handle it from here.
Confirmed. Cargo secured. JTF notified for pickup.